All right, well, it's a real pleasure to share my experience with young entrepreneurs. And in order to put it all in perspective, I'd like to share a bit of my background. I was born in Germany, came to the US when I was 16 with my parents, studied chemistry and then economics, and obtained my MBA. And then, like all young MBAs, decided to go into management consulting with one of the major American consulting firms. Worked for them in New York for a number of years, and then was transferred to Dusseldorf, Germany, and then actively worked out of their various European offices in both Paris and London and a couple of the Scandinavian locations. After a number of years, a client of mine offered me a job I couldn't refuse, and I actually moved the family to Chicago and became an operating manager. My boss at that time, who was CEO of the company, had also been a consultant many years ago, and he said, "Ernst, what you need to learn is not just analyze things and make recommendations, but actually do something and become responsible for revenue generation." So with my European background, I was put in charge of revenue generation in South America and Asia Pacific. So basically, throughout my entire career, I focused on both building and fixing international operations. And I think one of my key qualifications for that was both my personal interest in the international arena, as well as my ability to multitask and become an expert in a number of different areas without ever becoming stuck in one particular vertical segment. So over time, I've become a reasonably good HR person, a reasonably good salesperson, a reasonably good marketing person, and eventually was asked to, when I got out of day-to-day operations, to actually go in and head up several companies in a turnaround situation. The challenge there is that obviously analysis of a particular situation is very important, but decision-making sometimes needs to be even faster than analysis. So it's almost like a field general where you lead the troops down a certain valley and then come to the end of the valley and you say 180 and let's go back, we took the wrong turn. So as a turnaround executive, you really have to lead from the front. You have to be willing to make decisions, and then if you make the wrong decisions, rapidly realize that that's what you have done and take another tack. So the challenge and the fun throughout my career has been to rapidly address particular situations, find and implement a solution. And in many cases, it's surprising that actually finding the solution and implementing the solution was easier than convincing colleagues of mine on executive staff that that was the right thing to do. The question always exists, should we hire either a consultant or an employee from a large company, and we are just a small company at this point in time, and would that person from a large company really fit in or not fit in and be of benefit to us or not? I think there's several answers to that question. If you hire a person who's been in the domestic arena for a large corporation and always could draw on the different resources of his or her corporation, that is probably not an ideal person for a small company. Specifically, let's assume you wanted to open an office in Chicago. if you were in a large company, you would ask your real estate person to go scouting in Chicago and find the right location, and you might or might not even go there to see it yourself. It might be more beneficial to hire a person who has had both overseas and international experience, because that individual would not have had the luxury to rely on corporate resources, because corporate resources generally are only experts in the particular country that they're active in. So taking again the real estate expert to Tokyo and hoping that he or she could find the right location in Tokyo is probably not a very beneficial thing to do.
Okay, so what do you think are some of the biggest challenges for entrepreneurs as we look ahead? A little perspective on, is this a good time for startups, a bad time? Is it the kind of thing where you need to find the world's experts, or should you just buckle down and learn from what you can do yourself?
With respect to timing of the start of a new venture, I don't think there's ever an ideal time. I think if the founder and the visionary has an idea, it's probably worthwhile exploring the idea, probably worthwhile to identify a number of potential either partners or advisors that can counsel with respect to obtaining a more global perspective with respect to whether this is a good idea or not. So the fact that our economy right now is, how shall we say, stuck in neutral or stuck in a very low gear, I think actually offers an opportunity, because there are probably a number of experienced people willing to both re-engage as well as help for a nominal fee in terms of getting somebody else started.
How has the business world changed since you started versus now? What's the difference for a person that's looking to start into business?
The business world, to use a prevailing term, has become very, very global.
Good.
When I started in business, basically what went on in New York was not necessarily known on the West Coast, and what went on in the U.S. was not necessarily known in Latin America. And nowadays, whatever happens in New York today is known all over the world within less than half a day. So it's really become very global. So your markets have become global, your resources have become global, your financing have become global, and last but not least, your competition is global.
So the other thing I get asked a lot is, what do you look for in a new entrepreneur, young entrepreneur? What kind of attributes do you look for if you're looking to pick out business people that look like they can probably succeed?
I think looking for a person who's likely to succeed in starting and running a business, what you really need is somebody who is a visionary and is dedicated and is focused. In other words, in any particular situation, there will be bumps in the road, there will be unanticipated changes, but the real entrepreneur has a belief in the ultimate result. I sometimes put it this way, that the entrepreneur can see the result, which is several mountain peaks away, whereas an employee or a customer, or sometimes even the investors, can only see this side of the mountain.
That's good. How about education? You obviously have an MBA, and you've been through lots of different curriculums, training, and so forth. What's the place to start for somebody that, say, hasn't really spent the time yet to get through all the education? What should they focus on?
I think by and large education is worthwhile. but I don't think it's really that essential. If you take, for example, the current curricula of American business schools or even of American law schools, really what they teach you is to analyze cases, in other words, analyze precedents of what has happened before. So if you're smart and you're willing to take risks, I think an education is good, but it is not essential. As I look back at my career and look at the different things I have done and the areas where I've succeeded and where I've failed, my recommendation to you, the young entrepreneur, is take a risk. Go try something. At least in the US, the social attitude is, if you fail, even if it was your fault, why don't you pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and try again. So with that, I wish you good luck.